Far from the coast, far from ships, far from anything, a sperm whale dies on the surface of the open ocean, and for a brief instant, nothing seems to change. The waves continue to roll, the horizon remains empty, and the sea gives no sign that something extraordinary is about to happen. Then its body begins to sink. Tens of tons of concentrated biological energy move downwards through the water column, passing through layers where light fades, temperature drops, and pressure silently multiplies, carrying with it more food than the ocean floor normally sees in decades. The deep ocean is not a place of abundance. It is a place of scarcity, where most life survives on a slow and uncertain rain of organic debris falling from great heights, particles so small that entire ecosystems are built around efficiency, patience, and waiting. That is why this falling body is not only unusual, it is disruptive. When the whale finally reaches the ocean floor, thousands of meters below the surface, it doesn't simply become a carcass, but an event, a sudden injection of energy into one of the most food-scarce environments on Earth, an opportunity so great that it restructures life around it. Creatures begin to arrive, some almost immediately, others days later, some only after years, each responding to the same signal, each taking advantage of a different part of the body, each following a surprisingly ordered, surprisingly predictable, and brutally efficient sequence. What unfolds is not decomposition as we understand it on land, but a gradual process, a biological transition where one community feeds, modifies the environment, and then disappears, making way for the next, until even the bones become a source of energy. This is what scientists call a whale fall, but the name doesn't capture the scale of what happens here, because this single death can sustain life for decades, creating ecosystems that don't exist anywhere else, built entirely around a colossal mistake of place and time. In this episode, we'll follow this process from the moment the whale hits the ocean floor to the final stages, which continue long after its flesh has disappeared, revealing why the ocean floor treats food as currency, how survival is governed by strict rules, and why no other animal on Earth, living or dead, has the power to reshape the ocean floor like a sperm whale does when it sinks. You're about to discover the single rule that controls everything on the ocean floor, and why, once this whale stopped moving, its fate was sealed. In the deep ocean, energy is scarce and food is never guaranteed. There are no plants, sunlight, photosynthesis, or a constant food supply, only a slow and irregular snowfall of organic debris descending from the surface, known as marine snow, composed of microscopic remains that can take weeks or months to arrive, and often arrive already devoid of most of their nutritional value. Therefore, the ocean floor does not reward strength or speed like shallow waters, but rather efficiency, patience, and the ability to seize opportunities more quickly than any other nearby environment. Most animals that live down there depend on such a limited energy budget that missing a single opportunity to feed can mean the difference between survival and death. This is why growth is slow, reproduction is rare, and movement is minimized whenever possible. This is the rule. Nothing is wasted and nothing happens by chance. Thus, when a sperm whale falls into this system, it completely disrupts the balance because, instead of a few grams of food scattered over kilometers, the seabed suddenly receives tens of tons of usable energy concentrated in one place, delivered instantly, without competition from the surface world. This type of influx not only feeds individuals, but also restructures the local ecosystem, attracting scavengers from kilometers away, organisms capable of detecting chemical signals in the water and knowing that a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity has just arisen. But this is where the rule becomes even more important. Not everything can eat everything. Different parts of the whale become valuable at different times, and only certain organisms are equipped to take advantage of each stage, meaning that the whale's fall unfolds in a strict order, governed not by chance, but by access, biology, and energy efficiency. This raises two crucial questions that will guide everything that follows. First, who gets there first? And how does it consume so much food without destroying it all at once? And secondly, what happens after the obvious food runs out? When it seems like nothing remains but bones and sediment? These answers reveal why a whale carcass is not an isolated feeding event, but rather a long-lasting system that can persist for years and, in some cases, decades. If you are interested in how life survives where food is rare, energy is everything, and evolution pushes organisms to their absolute limits, this channel is built entirely around that idea, exploring deep-sea systems, extreme environments, and the rules that quietly control them. More episodes like this are coming, each one breaking down a different mechanism that keeps life going in places where it should not work at all. Be part of our community by subscribing to this channel. The moment the whale's body settles on the seabed, time begins to run out, because in the ocean depths, being first matters more than being powerful, and the animals that arrive now are not the largest or the most dominant. They are simply those that can move fast enough and detect the opportunity from afar. Within a few hours, sometimes even sooner, large mobile scavengers begin to appear, attracted by chemical signals spreading through the water. Signals that announce something almost unprecedented in this environment, an exposed and defenseless concentration of food. Sleeper sharks glide slowly, conserving energy, tearing off chunks of flesh with minimal effort, while hagfish invade any opening they find, penetrating the body itself, consuming the whale from the inside out, transforming muscles and organs into energy with an efficiency that seems brutal, but is perfectly adapted to this world. Around them, thousands of tiny scavengers gather, amphipods, crustaceans, and other invertebrates that normally survive on food scraps, now surrounded by more food than they could process in their entire lives, all competing against time, not against each other. This phase unfolds rapidly. In a matter of months, sometimes weeks, the soft tissue that makes up most of the whale's mass is consumed, not by chaos, but by relentless consumption, as every available calorie is converted into growth, reproduction, and energy storage. And this is the first great revelation of a whale's downfall. Speed controls the initial phase, not dominance. There is no territory to defend nor reason to fight, because the resource is too vast and time is too short, and once the easy energy is exhausted, remaining longer becomes a burden rather than an advantage. As the meat disappears, the environment around the carcass begins to change. The sediment becomes enriched with organic matter, oxygen levels drop, and conditions gradually transform from a zone favorable to scavengers into something far more extreme. This is the tipping point. The animals that arrived first begin to leave, not because the food has run out, but because the system they depend on is collapsing due to its own success. And what comes next demands a completely different survival strategy. The whale is no longer just food, it is becoming a chemical factory, and the next group of organisms is already waiting for this transformation to end. Once the last large pieces of flesh are gone, the whale fall does not end. It changes its operating system because the main source of energy is no longer meat, but chemistry. And this is where the scale of the event quietly expands. The bones of a sperm whale are not empty structures. They are packed with lipids, dense stores of fat that can make up more than half of their mass. And in the deep sea, that fat represents a long-term energy reserve, unlike anything else on the seafloor. As microbes move in, oxygen in the surrounding sediment drops sharply, and anaerobic bacteria take over, breaking down those lipids and releasing hydrogen sulfide as a byproduct, a compound toxic to most animals, but invaluable to a very specific group of organisms. This is the moment the whale fall enters its second major phase, where life no longer depends on eating the whale directly, but on harvesting the chemicals produced as it breaks down. Bacterial mats spread across the bones and surrounding sediment, forming thick, pale layers that look almost alive, because in a sense they are the engine now, converting chemical energy into usable biological fuel through chemosynthesis, the same process that powers hydrothermal vent ecosystems. And just like at vents, specialized animals arrive. Clams, mussels, worms, and other invertebrates settle in, many of them forming symbiotic relationships with bacteria inside their own tissues, outsourcing digestion entirely, turning toxic chemicals into nutrition with remarkable efficiency. This stage is slow, stable, and persistent. While the first phase burned through energy at maximum speed, this one stretches the remaining resources over years, sometimes decades, creating a localized ecosystem that can outlive the original carcass by a generation. But here is the second major reveal. The whale fall is no longer feeding mobile scavengers, it is anchoring life in place. Creatures stop roaming and start settling, reproduction increases, and species that may never survive elsewhere on the abyssal plane find a rare foothold around the bones. Yet even this phase has a limit. As the fat inside the bones is gradually exhausted, sulfide production declines, bacterial activity slows, and the chemical engine that sustained this community begins to shut down. What remains looks lifeless again, just bare white bones resting on dark sediment. But the system is not finished yet, because even now the whale still has one final contribution to make. The flesh is long gone, the chemical activity has slowed, the bacterial mats are thinning, and what remains appears to be nothing more than a clean skeleton resting in the dark, silent and still, exactly what you would expect from a system that has finally run out of fuel. But this is where the deep sea breaks expectations one last time, because the bones themselves are still packed with energy, locked away inside their structure. And there is a group of organisms that evolved for one purpose only, to access that energy when nothing else can. Bone-eating worms, known as osedacs, begin to colonize the skeleton, anchoring themselves directly into the whale's bones, not with teeth or jaws, but with root-like structures that dissolve bone tissue and tap into the remaining lipids hidden inside. They have no mouth, no stomach, and no digestive system in the way we normally understand it. Instead, they rely entirely on symbiotic bacteria living inside their bodies, bacteria that do the chemical work of breaking down bone material and converting it into usable energy. This is the climax of the whale fall for a simple reason. Even death's leftovers are still worth specializing for. At this stage, the whale has already fed scavengers, powered chemical ecosystems, and reshaped the surrounding sediment, yet it continues to support life in a form so specialized that these worms exist almost nowhere else. Some species of osedacs complete their entire life cycle on a single skeleton, reproducing, growing, and dying before the bones are finally exhausted, a process that can take several more years. And here is the most important implication. This means that the impact of one dead sperm whale is not measured in days or months, but in biological generations, sustaining life far beyond the moment of death, long after any visible sign of the original animal has disappeared. In the deep sea, this is not excess, this is efficiency taken to its absolute limit. Nothing arrives often enough to be wasted, not even bone. When the last specialized organisms abandon the skeleton, when the final reserves of fat locked inside the bones are exhausted, and when bacterial activity slowly fades back into the background of the sediment, the deep sea does not react. It does not reset itself with any visible signal, and it does not preserve evidence of what just happened. The seafloor returns to silence, darkness, and stillness, exactly as it was before the whale arrived. A flat and seemingly empty landscape where movement is rare, food is scarce, and nothing suggests that an entire ecosystem once existed in this exact spot. But the absence of visible change is misleading, because what unfolded here was not a moment. It was a long sequence of transactions, transfers, and adaptations, all driven by one unavoidable rule that governs life in the deep ocean. In this environment, energy is not just valuable, it is decisive, and its rarity defines everything that lives here. A sperm whale in life is a powerful, intelligent predator of the open ocean, but in death, it becomes something far more important to the deep sea, a concentrated package of surface energy delivered to a place that almost never receives it, carrying within its body more usable fuel than the surrounding ecosystem might otherwise see over many decades. That is why the response is so precise, not chaotic, not random, and not wasteful. The deep sea does not rush blindly toward abundance. It processes it step by step, stretching a single event across time, converting one massive input into years of survival opportunities for organisms that would otherwise never encounter anything like it. First, mobile scavengers arrive and consume quickly, because speed matters when energy appears without warning, and competition is defined by time rather than aggression. And once the easy gains are gone, those same animals withdraw, leaving behind an altered environment that no longer suits their biology. Then chemistry takes over, as bacteria transform the remaining resources into a different kind of fuel, one that supports slow, stable communities anchored in place, organisms that no longer chase food but live directly on the chemical consequences of decomposition. And when even that system begins to shut down, when sulfide production declines and bacterial mats thin out, specialization reaches its most extreme form, with organisms evolving entire life strategies around extracting the final traces of energy from bone itself, extending the usefulness of the whale long after any recognizable part of the original animal has disappeared. Nothing in this sequence is accidental. Every stage follows the same logic. Extract energy at the pace that maximizes survival, delay depletion as long as possible, and allow nothing of value to go unused. This is why whale falls matter beyond curiosity or scale. They act as temporary anchors of life in an otherwise empty world, creating islands of abundance that allow species to reproduce, disperse, and persist across the vast distances of the abyssal plain, connecting populations that might otherwise remain isolated for evolutionary timescales. Some researchers suggest that these rare events may have helped shape deep-sea biodiversity itself, functioning as biological stepping stones that bridged gaps between stable but isolated systems like hydrothermal vents, long before humans ever observed them. And this is where the modern ocean quietly enters the story. For centuries, industrial whaling dramatically reduced the number of large whales, and with them, the frequency of these massive energy deliveries to the deep seafloor, meaning fewer whale falls, fewer temporary ecosystems, and fewer opportunities for deep-sea life to exploit the only kind of abundance it ever truly receives. No collapse would have been visible, no sudden absence noticeable from the surface, because the deep sea does not fail loudly. It simply operates with less margin, stretching survival thinner, waiting longer between opportunities, and adapting in silence. So when a sperm whale surfaces, breathes and disappears beneath the waves, it is not only continuing a life cycle that belongs to the surface ocean, it is also carrying, unknowingly, the potential to sustain life far below, in total darkness, in a place where nothing is judged by intelligence, beauty, or dominance, only by how much energy arrives, how slowly it can be spent, and how efficiently it can be taken apart. That is the rule the deep sea follows, and every whale that falls proves it again. Thanks for watching. Be part of our community by subscribing to this channel. Until the next video.